Are you truly stepping into the role of leader in your own life the way you know you're meant to? What shifts would unlock your full potential? It's time to explore those answers with the host of Sacred Leadership, intuitive business coach Sherisse Alexander.
Welcome to yet again another episode of Sacred Leadership with Sherisse here on the Inspired Choices Network. So today I am chatting about endings, and today the title is called Endings Part Two, but really this is a bit of a series because it's my firm belief that endings are a process. It's not, you might make them a decision, but there's a whole bunch of things that go along with that. So endings rarely finish when we decide they are over. In today's part of the endings series, I am returning to the threshold that I deliberately had left open after the last episode. And I'm asking about, or we're talking today about the middle and what it really requires of us. Trust before there is any proof, surrender of the how rather than the what, and the one we almost never complete, which is learning to receive. Most of us are really not that great at receiving. Real surrender is not about giving up. It is never acceptance of harm. It is loosening our grip on the form the answer has to take. So today, as we talk through this, or as I share my own journey around endings, and as I've said, as I was planning this particular episode, I didn't really have full scope of all the endings that would be going on in my life, but that realistically speaking is how the divine works. And as I've said on other episodes, you could really be ready for an ending, but there's still a process. There's still, the processing of those feelings, the grief, the doubt, the anxiety, the questioning, the maybe straddling the line, the joy that comes along with it, the sadness. Like these are all parts of endings, no matter how much we might be welcoming them. And today, what we're talking about are the things that or the space that we really need to move into in the middle, which is about trusting, which is about surrendering, and equally about receiving. So I have done, I would say, a fairly good job of just allowing things to unfold. So the decision's been made. Okay, let's talk through the ending. The decision's been made. And there's a whole bunch of feelings that go on with what that decision is. And I'm somebody who really enjoys spending a lot of time in my mind. And as such, I do question myself a lot. So the piece that was held at the end of the last show was the piece around it's okay to be sad about an ending, but equally relieved. And that might bring about a whole bunch of questions. And today, as I even think about it, or as I begin to continue to move through this process, I think where I find myself now is moving into the space and place of acceptance and not maybe feeling so bad about an ending, but more just kind of being like, no, this journey is actually meant to be joyful. It's meant to be fulfilling. It's meant to be lived with just full zest in life. And if something you're doing, a job you're working, a relationship you're in, a house that you're living in, any of these things are not present, to me, that's a key indicator that something might needs to be changed. And endings don't necessarily mean that it has to be completely over. It could just be an end to a way of being. And sometimes that's just simply a small refinement. So as I move through this process, some of the questions that I'm asking myself is, what is the thing that I am perhaps still not saying? And I think I've already alluded to it in some of today's episode already, which is that while there's sadness over an ending, there's equally a sigh of relief. Like this, it's okay to take that thing off, that responsibility, that commitment that I made, and choose to do something that really frees myself and the capacity and the bandwidth to go out and do what it is that I need to do that's part of my journey. And as I reflect on that and, kind of maybe the roller coaster of emotions that one will go through within an ending, did I think that it would be easier? And are there still places where I see my ego showing up? And those are always interesting spots to me, when um, I can see peaks or glimpses of when my ego wants to come out to play. And I take those opportunities to like really ask myself more questions. And of course, the first one is it's like, okay, so that was interesting. Why? What was I really thinking within that? Or what was I really feeling within that? And, when we're moving into an ending, we all usually have an idea of how that's going to go. But then ultimately, what ends up happening is we um, move into a place and space of just acceptance for whatever unfolds as we are moving through that ending. And so for me, I think that as I process the emotions that are coming up with this ending, I'm finding that it's actually easier than I thought it would be. I think I was actually bracing myself for it to be really difficult and really painful. And that's not to say that there haven't been moments where those emotions have come up, but I find that once I begin to like release the grip on what the experience and the control, really more than anything else, once I start to release the control on what the experience is looking like, it feels like I'm really more in a space and place of being in flow with what the this process is looking like. And with that, I asked myself additionally, what was the piece that I have consciously or unconsciously put down or moved away from? And I just said it, control. I can think of endings that I've gone through in the past, and one that I alluded to on this podcast was like, the end of a relationship is probably a really great example because most people can identify with the ending of any kind of relationship, be it a romantic one, a work one, a friendship. At some point, everybody has gone through some type of end of a relationship. But the idea was that I can't really control how someone else is going to show up in that experience. The only thing that I can do is manage myself within that. And I think that the thing that I learned how to let go of was that idea around control. I'm not really concerning myself with the other people in the process of endings. I'm really just making sure that I stay heart centered, that I stay in love with it, that I do not allow myself to be pulled into emotions of fear, anxiety, doubt. And it's not like they don't come up. I observe them. When they come up, I go something like, that's interesting. I wonder why I'm feeling like that about that right now, but not getting pulled into it. And so that control piece is probably the biggest piece that I have learned to quietly set down, not feeling like if anything, I think, and this I think dawned on me early this morning, where I was just like, you know what? I am like really going to go out there and create exactly what it is that I am looking for myself. And so it was almost a feeling of magic that came over me within this, realizing that if I put down the idea of having to control somebody else's experience within this, it frees up a lot of bandwidth for me to redirect that energy fully towards myself and create whatever experience it is that I want. It's extremely empowering. In fact, this morning I woke up with a little spring in my step because it was just like this really wondrous realization. And it sounds silly, but at the same time, we all talk about it. But when it really, and again, these things are so subtle, they're so minute, they're such subtle shifts that really kind of change the entire experience. And so within that, I feel like because I have let go of the control, it really almost opens up a whole new world of possibilities and opportunities. And I was just having a conversation this morning with somebody who was equally going through a very difficult ending. And I'd actually said to them, I said, I'm really quite proud of how you're like handling yourself within this because endings are difficult or can be difficult. They can be really challenging. And this person had moved into a place and space of like exactly what I'm talking about, which is like relinquishing the control, being very clear about boundaries and really clearly stating like this is not designed to, or this posture that this person was moving into was not designed to hurt you, the other party. It was really about preserving my own peace. And that is just such a powerful, powerful position to move into. And I think that once we begin to identify these things within us, it really allows us to begin to move into things like trust, surrender, and receiving. So I guess the first part of this middle section of endings is identifying these things, right? Really learning how to soften a little bit, really doing a lot of introspection. A lot of the things that I talk about here are the things that have really helped me. I know that talking is really great, and I love to talk. But at the same time, I feel like most of the answers, I'm certain actually, most of the answers that we seek are sitting right within me. Somebody can maybe help me, peel away the debris of what's confusing. But a lot of what how I process things myself personally is to just really sit and ask myself a lot of questions, the ones that are like most difficult, the ones that are taxing. I allow myself to feel whatever it is that I want to feel. And even within myself, just choosing not to make commitments anymore. And there was a long time, let me be careful about how I say that. I don't want to say I don't want to make commitments, but for a very long time, I lived in um, a headspace of feeling like I had to do something, or because somebody expected me to do something, or they expected me to show up a certain way. But the people who know me very well know that I'm literally going to dance to the beat of my own drum. And I'm not the person that's going to argue with you. I'll say my piece. We'll either work together on it. And if we don't, no problem. I'm not going to fight with you. I'm going to go off in my own direction and do my own thing. So it's just such a new and empowering place to be in, where it's like I'm really finally finding this new inner level of strength and authenticity and courage, where it's just like exactly what I said. I'm not going to argue or justify the choices that I make for myself any longer, as I choose what still gets my bandwidth and doesn't. And so I would invite you to go through the same process if you find that you are moving through some type of ending in your life. And what's really interesting as I reflect on this is I was thinking kind of about the timing of this, where we're heading into dare I say, the final parts of the year, like getting into almost Q4. Well, not that close, but close. And not that long ago, I did this whole mid-year reset. And I'll tell you, at the time that I did that particular series, I didn't think that there would be, and I know I definitely alluded to, decide what is continuing to serve your journey, decide what isn't. And the interesting part to me is that the things that I thought would be exiting my life, or that I would ending or be letting go of, um, surprisingly, there's new and different things, and not things that are earth shattering in an obvious way, but they're earth shattering to me. So that's why I can't stress enough that the endings that I'm talking about don't always have to be um, they're life changing, but not in a majorly disruptive way. And I think that the other piece that I've really learned within this is to like take my time with it. There is zero reason to rush through a process. And I had this coach once that had said that when we go through things like this, there's no need to create any more trauma in the process. Um, there's enough wounding that goes on just in, living a day-to-day life. But there's no need, because there would be a time when I'd be like, I'm just going to rip the band-aid off of this situation and damn the consequences. But sometimes ripping band-aids off of scenarios can create more wounds than anything else. And so the other thing that I've learned is to like really take my time with it, have grace and compassion for myself equally, because that's what allows me, by taking my time with it, to really stay rooted in being heart centered. Because if I'm staying heart centered and I'm approaching it with compassion, empathy, grace, and love, then that will be received in some capacity by the other parties, so that might be experiencing your ending. And they will equally, in some way, show up and meet you in that same energy. They still might not like the ending of whatever it is that you're ending, but it'll really kind of change and evolve the energy of what an ending can look like. So we are going to go ahead and take our first break. And when we get back, we're going to talk about trust. We will be right back.
Leadership isn't reserved for CEOs or world leaders. It's something each of us is called to embody in our own lives. But how do you awaken that inner leader with clarity and confidence? On Sacred Leadership with intuitive business coach Sherisse Alexander, you'll discover powerful tools and spiritual insights to align your words, actions, and outcomes. Tune in every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 Central, 9 Mountain, and 8 Pacific, right here on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is Sacred Leadership with Sherisse Alexander. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also send an email to Sherisse@pavitraleadership.com. Now back to the program.
Welcome back to Sacred Leadership with Sherisse here on the Inspired Choices Network. And I did it yet again. I was so in the vibe of talking about what I wanted to talk about today that I forgot to say the title, or maybe I did, but didn't focus on it. So this episode today is part of an ending series. And today, in this particular segment of the series, we were talking about trust, surrender, and receiving. So in the first segment, I was recapping kind of the process of the things that I've been learning as I've been going through various endings at this particular point in my year. Some were obvious and others were surprising. And so I feel really good about where I am overall in this journey. And that doesn't mean that there haven't been days of sadness or questioning or grief or any of these things. But, you know, you kind of have to go through those things before you can move into the middle. And the middle is where we are looking to trust, surrender, and receive. Because sometimes when we end something, we don't really know what's next. Um, if we use something like a job, and you can choose to end a job. And I'm actually recalling a time when it was just so sudden, but I was working somewhere and, there was a little bit of friction in the workplace, but it just happened one day. It was a beautiful long weekend. And the person I was working with at the time had contacted me and just literally ruined my weekend, or I allowed this person to ruin my weekend. And I was camping and I was with my family. And I just looked at my then husband. And I said, you know what? I think on Tuesday or Monday, when I go back, I'm going to quit that job. And my then husband was like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just done. And sometimes endings come just like that. You just have one thing happens and it's not emotional. You just know that it's just time to put an end to it. And there's no trauma and no drama for you. There might be for the other person, but for you, you're good. And at that particular point in time, I had a glimpse of what I was going to. And that was the transition from working kind of for someone else into working fully and wholly for myself. But this is like the very beginning of my mortgage brokering career. I had like zero clients. I had done zero marketing, zero average, like none of those things were in place. I didn't even know if I was going to get a paycheck from this place. So I literally, at that moment in time, and that I'm bringing up this story because it is a beautiful example of trust. There is this very abrupt ending that I did not plan for. And when I left that job, I remember saying to the sales manager, the sales manager came to talk to me and he was like, "Well, when are you done?" I'm like, "Today." Like, I'm not, there's no 2 weeks notice. We're not doing any of those things. I refuse to work in this type of environment. I'm just not doing this anymore. Like at the time, the kids were really little, and I always wanted to work in an environment or create a career for myself where I could be very actively involved in my children's lives. And so this seemingly abrupt thing just made the decision very, very easy for me. So in that moment when I'd made this decision, and remember what I said, I didn't even know if I was going to get a paycheck from this place when I left. And I feel no shame about saying it's not like I had 3 or 6 months of emergency savings sitting around that I could live on. I had zero. Yes, I was married at the time, but anyways, long story short, that net was not there. There was zero safety net for me. And I remember just kind of being like, I don't really particularly care. I am not going to um, continue to work in an environment that is robbing my joy. I am going to go out there and create something beautiful for myself and my family. And that's exactly what I did. There was zero question about it. It was just kind of like, and that is the example of trust that I'm talking about. I didn't get pulled into panic mode. I didn't freak out. I didn't call a bunch of friends and family and say, "Hey, can you like float me money?" None of that happened. I remember calling the brokerage that I wanted to go work for. And I just said, "Hey, I'm free. Can I come in on Monday?" And they were like, "Yeah, absolutely." And then moved into like divine masculine energy. And that was like, now we're going to logically plan. So this thing happened, abrupt ending, trusted the instinct to quit the job, end it. Yes, there was something that was there because I had a broker's license, but I didn't have like a full safety net of paychecks that were going to come after this. But I trusted. And so, what I would offer to you is that if you find yourself in this place right now, what are you being asked to trust that you have no evidence for? Like zero. And if we go back to me quitting this job, what I was trusting was that I was resourceful enough and good enough, not good enough, excellent at this type of environment that I was working in. And what I mean when I say that is like consumer credit and that kind of thing, that I was going to be just fine. So you could say that I was actually trusting that the clients would come, that I would make as much money as I needed at any point in time. And back then, it was, I wasn't really questioning things in the same way. But again, so the question that I would ask you is if you find yourself going through an ending right now, what is it that you need to trust right now that you can't see? And within that, the other piece about trust is like, this is where that flow state really needs to come in. When I go back in my mind's eye to that phase in my life, right? There is a difference between trusting and hoping. Hoping is like it's got this energy of like, I really hope this goes well. And trust is the exact opposite of that. It's like I really trust that I'm good at this and that all the clients I need will come, and this is absolutely the right move for me. If you are into energetics, or if you wonder if you've gone through something before where you've been asked to trust like blindly almost, that it's so subtle, the difference in that energy. And when I think back to that point in time of being in a state of trust, I was trusting myself. And I think intuitively, I was trusting the divine without necessarily having the language for that. Because often I find myself looking back, and for anybody who, is self employed or works on commission or anything like that, where you are really responsible for generating your own income, you sit in a state of trust more often than not. And as I've said on this podcast many, many times before, even in those moments where money seemed, or resources, because that was usually the thing that would create stress or anxiety in my life, is like, oh, gee, I don't have enough clients this month that are going to help me meet this goal that I must have. Um, but when I looked back and looked at all the times, I was never, ever in a need of money, not once. It was always there. And once that realization was there for me, it almost obliterated the idea that there was this thing attached to money and abundance that I couldn't trust. I knew I could trust it because there was repeated evidence that I could trust it, even though I couldn't see it. And even though I didn't necessarily know where the deal or the client or the money was going to come from, the resources, I just was able to move into a space and place of just, I'm not going to worry about it. Um, and then with that question, the other piece is, where are you requiring proof before you make that move? So if we go back to the trust piece, or sit in the trust piece and asking about what you need to trust right now, with me choosing to quit this job, I could have easily said, and I think back then I actually did have a plan where I was like, okay, I might transition out of this existing job when I meet this consistent threshold of income from this brokering or whatever. Well, that never happened. So but that's an example of the proof that I felt like I needed. Like, if it was, I needed $5,000 a month, that would have been the proof. And the universe doesn't work like that, because that's almost like saying, okay, I'll take this leap when you show me. I'll take this leap when you show me. When you give me the proof, I'll show you. And it doesn't work like that. You actually have to take the leap first, and then the information comes. And this is setting the stage for, the other two pieces of this process, which are surrender and receiving. And what during this whole like current endings piece, remember I said there were so many places that endings began to show up for me. Coming back to that question around trust, because I recognize that through my life experience, trust has always been a factor for me. So when I say to you, I understand it's not easy to sit in a place of trust, I really understand it's not easy to sit in a place of trust. But the question that came up for me was, where did this question come up for me first? Who taught me? And maybe not even who, but what experience really taught me that trusting was a very dangerous thing to do? And it was really, really, really early, like probably so long ago, but in a way that um, really shapes your formative years, in a way that literally forces you to, with kind of unconsciously, but really forces you to be in a space of not really wanting to trust anybody ever. And when I look at like all of the instances in my life, I can see how trust is, and this is how the divine works, right? In order to learn how to trust, it's going to test your trust. But I can see now, and that to me, that awareness that has come into my consciousness, and this is the beauty of when these things happen, is you think you're ending one thing, right? You think you're ending a job or a relationship or a friendship or whatever the case may be. But when you begin to peel back the layers, you realize you're ending so much more. And that's really what I'm talking about. Forget the obvious ending. It's all the layered endings that I'm talking about. And for me, one of these things has really been an ending of not trusting. And most important, myself, not trusting myself, really giving away my authority to others to tell me what I should do in my life. Nobody knows what my soul journey is other than me and my soul. And realistically speaking, that through this process of having to learn how to trust when the answers are not obviously there, or the path is not fully clear, or um, everything's not necessarily fully laid out for me, but through this journey of peeling back the layers and asking myself these questions of like, well, where did this first happen and how has it impacted my life? How has it shown up in all of these different decisions and things like that? It really becomes quite freeing, is the point that I'm getting that at. So the biggest win from this most recent myriad of endings is the ending of not trusting myself and the things that show up in my world. So, great. Now what? You trust. What comes next? We're going to go ahead and take our next break and we will talk about surrender. We'll be right back.
Leadership isn't reserved for CEOs or world leaders. It's something each of us is called to embody in our own lives. But how do you awaken that inner leader with clarity and confidence? On Sacred Leadership with intuitive business coach Sherisse Alexander, you'll discover powerful tools and spiritual insights to align your words, actions, and outcomes. Tune in every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 Central, 9 Mountain, and 8 Pacific, right here on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is Sacred Leadership with Sherisse Alexander. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to Sherisse@pavitraleadership.com. Now back to the program.
Welcome back to Sacred Leadership here with Sherisse on the Inspired Choices Network, where today we are continuing the series on endings, and we are talking about trust, surrender, and receiving. So in the previous segments, I have been recapping various endings, right? The ones that are obvious, the ones that are not so obvious, and how we can begin to move through a very, I'd say, somewhat structured approach to begin to have clarity when the ending comes abruptly and we don't know what's next. And the example that I'm using in today's episode was the ending of a career a while ago. Geez, now that I think about it, almost 20 years ago. Really dating myself. But how in that moment, when the ending was abrupt and unexpected, that I almost without effort had managed. I didn't even know what I was doing, to be honest with you. I just knew that I was not going to stay in that particular environment anymore. But how I was able to trust more than anything else, without evidence, myself. And once we trust, we move into surrender. And sometimes that word surrender is one that a lot of people get confused with what the meaning is. Surrender is not giving up. Surrender is not becoming a passive participant in your life. Surrender is, in my mind, energetic. And we all know the energy of desperately holding on to something. You can even make it look like you're not, but there's an energy of gripping something for fear of the unknown. And the surrender I'm talking about is literally just kind of being like, okay, I release my grip on this. And you might be asking, like, well, what grip? The outcome, the how, all the things that might not be in the best and highest alignment of all the parties that are involved in whatever the situation is. So if we use the job as an example. So I was so solid in my decision of what that was going to look like. But let's just imagine for a moment that I was gripping onto this job and for fear of not having a paycheck, which is a super valid fear. Like, this is not be me by any stretch of the imagination. Say, go quit your job and don't have something else to go to. I am simply sharing my experience and my choice. That's it. But let's just imagine for a moment that I was like gripping onto this job that was clearly not making me happy, draining my joy, and not bringing me peace because I was scared that I would be, destitute. That would eventually, and it was already showing, like the environment was already showing me that it was out of alignment with who I was. But if I was just continuing to do it, all the universe does is just turns up the volume on those kinds of things, like just makes it louder and louder and louder and more uncomfortable until you finally go, you know what? I release, I surrender. I am not, this is clearly not for me. And it's when there's a real misalignment, a real incoherence, when it is, to me, the sign is when it is draining your joy. That is, and I mean on a regular, consistent basis. And when I always talk about mortgage brokering, in terms of being the thing that I can say would literally get me up out of, like, there was a fire in my belly. I would dream about deals. It was the first time that I'd ever done something where I was in love with it, like in love with a career. And that I was in love with brokering. So you can imagine how I felt when I was just like, I'm not in love with this thing anymore. It was really disappointing, if I'm honest with you. But all kinds of endings, right? Jobs are easy to talk about. But what I realized is that even then, like, I wasn't in this place of like gripping it intensely because I was able to let it go. And once I was able to let it go and just go with the flow, then it allowed the space for other things to come in. And somewhere along the way, and I think it's really societally, because the question that emerges is like, well, where did I learn this idea that this word surrender means that I'm somehow losing? How am I losing within this? And I think that if we all really take a real objective, large step back and just kind of look at the world and just what's on social media, what's in media, what's generally out there. Sure, there might be more talk about surrender, release, go with the flow today. 20 years ago, there was not. 20 years ago, it was like, no, just grin and bear it and, just do it, like things like that. And you can hear the energy, like, go watch the commercials if you don't believe me. But everything was about like this never let go energy, like just hold on to it forever and ever and ever, choke the energy out of it. And so I couldn't say that it was just like, one particular person. I think it's just conditioning that we are all conditioned in some way, shape, or form to like never let something go, never surrender, force it. And no offense. So, men, if you hear this, do not be offended, but that is real divine masculine energy. I'm going to will it to death. And the world doesn't need any more of that. So let's maybe try something new. And this is where the surrender piece comes in. So when I think about where I thought surrender meant losing, I would say it's just been ingrained and conditioned. I don't think that there was any one person or event that told me that. I think it's just an entire society and environment that says you got to do it in this push your way through it, this gritty kind of get her done kind of attitude. Time and place for that, but it's not always. Um, and when you start to analyze like all of the things that go along with surrendering, it's not just releasing the grip, but it's like, okay, what else am I willing to give up in a surrender? So, when we think about things like, in the case of the job, yes, there's the obvious, okay, I'm going to surrender, but it also, interestingly enough, meant that I had to let go of the idea that I had to do it all by myself. That was the piece that I equally needed to, and that was a really tricky piece for me, right? because of being in this constant and consistent energy of like, you get it done, nose down and just focus and grit through it. And so it makes it really difficult to even go to your partner and say, hey, I made this decision because I really think that it's robbing my joy. And if it robs my joy, then it robs all of you of joy. Do you think you can? And you might be like, well, why would you need to have that conversation? I mean, I did have the conversation, but even within that conversation, I never asked my then husband, hey, do you have my back? I never even said, if anything, I immediately moved into like once this decision was made, I think I spent like maybe a couple of weeks just kind of enjoying the glow of not having to be somewhere. But then shortly after that, it was like, okay, nose down, grit, get through it. So I quickly moved back into this energy of like, we have to get it done. And so one of the other things that I now know that I needed to surrender in that moment was this need to be able to have to do it all by myself. And as I find myself going through endings again right now, I had this epiphany this morning. And again, it was this whole magical co-creation energy where I was like, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to ask unapologetically. I am going to ask for all kinds of support. I'm going to ask for all the things that I want because that is how I co-create the experience that I want for myself. Why do I think that I need to do it by myself? There are 8 billion people on this planet. Why do I feel like I need to do everything by myself? So there's a surrender within that and not feeling any shame, no blame, and zero judgment. And trust me, I was having fun with it this morning. I was like, writing down a full list. I mean, I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to ask for help on this. I'm going to get this done. Da, da, blah, blah. I was literally making up a whole while I'm co-creating, for lack of putting it a better way. I'm co-creating because I surrendered my need to control um, to do it all by myself, to have to figure out what this next chapter looks like as I move through these endings. And instead, I'm going to like rely on the infinite amount of resources that are in my experience, the ones I see, the ones that I don't see, the ones that are yet to come, all of them. And I'm literally just kind of putting it out there like help, help, help. And not in a way that I feel bad about it. I'm like, I deserve it. I have spent 47 years gritting it out. I'm good. I'm ready for like flow, to be honest with you. And the beautiful thing about moving into that energy is that I equally have learned or am learning how to surrender the idea of what it looks like. So, when you have a vision of, at the beginning of this year, I had a very different idea of what this year was going to look like. I find myself saying to people often, I'm like, I thought this was a fire horse year. Like, I thought this year was supposed to be like really fun. And then I realized I'm like, oh, well, I am having fun. Like I'm not upset by anything that's kind of unfolding in my world right now. I'm really looking at this as like the vision that I have is like, every day you get an opportunity to have a blank canvas and fully create your experience. And that is how I'm choosing to engage with my day. So the other piece that I have found myself surrendering in is how does it look? So even if I had an idea at the beginning of this whole endings process, I'll tell you right now, it's not the same idea today a week later that it was a week ago. It's different because I've surrendered that it has to be specifically one thing. And that's why I say the subtlety of endings is not always like a finality. Sometimes it's just the way in which you are choosing to engage with your experience. And I think that that's really what I've come to. Like, that is honestly the most impactful ending that I am talking about here. It's the way that I am choosing to engage with my experience. It's like engaging with life in terms of it, like it's such a gift. And I know that we say that and we sometimes say it very blithely, like, oh, life is such a gift. But when that magic really starts to appear in your life, I feel like you move into this place and space of like awe and wonder. And so when you have an opportunity, look at a little kid.
and how they engage with their world. I had the gift of having my nieces and nephew with me this last weekend, and little kids are so good for this because they really move through life in this really magical way. And my niece is like 2, so she's like fun. But she's like she did this whole painting, and when we were all looking at it the night that she did it, we're all like, "Oh gosh, what is she doing?" It's like it's just a lot of mess. There's paint all over the place. But the next day, when it had dried and I was looking at it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's actually a masterpiece. It is actually a masterpiece. It was like she had intuitively had painted this kind of stormy, cloudy day. And you guys know these days that I'm talking about if you live in an environment where there's very clearly delineated seasons, but those stormy days when the clouds are gray, but you can see the rays of sunshine, they're starting to come through and there's different hue. That is what this little girl had painted. And she's 2. And so I was just like, wow, that moment put me in a place of awe and wonder. And I think that that's what begins to happen when we begin to relinquish the control that we feel like we need to have. So we are going to talk about the funnest part, which is the receiving. We all want more, don't we? So when we get back from this next break, we will move into what comes after surrender, which is gifts of receiving. We will be right back.
Leadership isn't reserved for CEOs or world leaders. It's something each of us is called to embody in our own lives. But how do you awaken that inner leader with clarity and confidence? On Sacred Leadership with intuitive business coach Sherisse Alexander, you'll discover powerful tools and spiritual insights to align your words, actions, and outcomes. Tune in every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 Central, 9 Mountain, and 8 Pacific, right here on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is Sacred Leadership with Sherisse Alexander. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to Sherisse@pavitraleadership.com. Now back to the program.
Welcome back to Sacred Leadership with Sherisse here on the Inspired Choices Network. If you are enjoying today's episode and really everything on this particular show, please go find me. Well, give me a 5-star review on your favorite listening platform. But today, what I'm talking about is endings and the part of endings that I don't know that we all necessarily really drill down to. And those pieces are trust, surrender, and receiving. So in the previous segment today, I talked about kind of the heavier piece and the peeling back of the layers and the debris that needs to be kind of cleared out to like make way for what's next. And I clearly said, even a week or 10 days ago, whenever I was kind of planning for this episode and talking about endings, I wasn't really fully cognizant of what those endings would be. And it's been truthfully a very enlightening experience. Because after we can kind of begin to deal with those heavier pieces, we move into phase 1, which is beginning to trust or learning how to trust even when we can't see. The second piece of that is the surrender. So this is not a giving up or a giving in, but more releasing, just gentling the grip on the outcome of a situation or managing other people or how the things show up, because there's your plan and then there's divine's plan. And I can tell you what I've learned in this experience is that what we envision for ourselves is only like a smidgen of what is available to us. It's just a mere speck. And so I think that life has shown me to this point that I can absolutely trust what the divine and the universe has in store for me. It's not always easy. I'm not gonna paint this as a skippity-doo kind of experience, at least for me. Hopefully yours will be better. But for me, it hasn't always been like that. I'm talking about the whole life journey. I'm not talking about endings specifically. I'm getting better. And once we move into the endings, then the fun part, or sorry, the surrender piece, then the fun part really starts to show up, which is the receiving. And to me, it's the most exciting part because learning to trust it's heavy. There's stuff that you have to clear away. Surrendering can be scary because you don't have any proof of what is coming, what's being offered. You just kind of gotta trust and surrender. But the receiving is kind of like, I wonder what I'm gonna get. It's like literally being a kid on Christmas morning with all of your presents and like, I don't know what I'm gonna get. Like, I'm so excited. There's so many things that I asked for. Like, how's it gonna come to me? How's it gonna show up? Like, it's just gonna be so exciting. So it's like this whole experience of being a kid, getting to be a kid again, but as an adult with my life. And, I keep using this word magical because I just feel like I'm in this fully magical place that I'm really enjoying right now. So when something good begins to arrive, and it's not necessarily things, it's more than anything else, it's experiences. And honestly, it's been 2 weeks since I started planning this episode and, consciously engaging with the endings in my life. And it's like there's new awarenesses, there's new experiences, there's new insights, there's new conversations. And it's just like, it's literally like I have zero idea what I'm going to get on any given day, but I'm certainly excited. And when I engage with my day, I'm just like, I wonder what's going to happen today. I'm so excited to see what's going to happen. I can't wait. It's like I'm reading a book of my life. I have no idea what's going to happen. And that is where the magic really happens because you got to be in joy to be able to create. And that's the fun part is like, yeah, I'm putting intention into what I desire for myself, but it's not like this gripping. It's more like, I want to feel like this and I want to experience that. And I mean, I'm asking for all of it. I was doom scrolling for a moment last night. I'm actually kind of surprised that I was doing it because I was on TikTok. I'm just like, why am I doing this to myself? There's nothing good on here. It's all just terrible news. And so I'm just like, I got to get out of there because that is not my experience. I refuse for that to be my experience. All the things that like keep us stuck in places of fear and all this other kind of stuff. I just absolutely refuse to do that. And so I leave myself fully open. And like literally, first thing this morning, a surprise bagel and coffee showed up on my doorstep. Never happened. And it was just, and that's what I mean. It seems so tiny, but it was this tiny little thing that like started my day in this beautiful, beautiful way. So those are the small things, but there's equally bigger things that I know are around the corner. And there's this patience within it because I know that I'm so in a state of trust that everything is going to be just fine. If anything, everything is going to be even better than I imagine it to be. And surrender. Hey man, you take the wheel because, sometimes the choices I make without connecting with my higher self, they're not always the best choices. So this is the part where if you really lean into it and love the experience, and you might be saying to yourself, well, how do I even do that? To me, the answer is really simple. Follow the things that light you up. Follow the things that make you smile. Follow the things that bring you joy. And when you're in that state, whenever you find yourself in that state, write it down. Use your phone and like set an intention for something because those states, believe it or not, are incredibly powerful when you are beginning to co-create the life that you want for yourself after an ending has emerged in your life. And so use the energy. Right now, there's like so many things that are coming apart and breaking down, not in just in your life, but like if we think about it on a much bigger scale, don't allow yourself to be pulled into that. Don't allow yourself to sit in a state of doom and fear. Like those are very constrictive types of energy. It's very difficult to create from that place and space. So go out today and ask yourself, even if you're not sure, just ask yourself in a moment, what is it that I need for myself today? And go out there and do it. So thank you for joining me today. And until next time, take care of yourselves.
Thank you for listening to the Sacred Leadership Show. Sherisse returns Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 Central, 9 Mountain, and 8 Pacific on the InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Until then, continue taking small steps today to be a leader in your life for the collective.